Hey everybody, it's Crimson Rosso here, and today is officially my 27th birthday. I'm now another year older on this wonderful place, called Earth. And I wanted to celebrate my birthday with a ranking video like I did last year. But this time, instead of ranking Kingdom Hearts bosses, I'm going to be ranking the Trails games from worst to best. But before we begin, I should probably set some rules. 1. I'm only ranking the games up to Reverie as I want to focus solely on the first half of the franchise. So we're keeping it from FC to Reverie only. Helps keep it more compact, you know? And second, I'm not including Nayuta, because even now, I'm still not certain where it fits in Trails lore. So until we know where that is, can't really put it anywhere. Hell, I can't even really say it's part of the Trails until we get more confirmation. With that said, kick back, grab some Mishi Mersh, wish me a happy birthday in the comments below, maybe even like and sub as well, and let's get into this. Okay, so this one is probably to the surprise of absolutely no one. My least favorite game in the entire first half of Trails is easily Cold Steel 1. It's not a bad game, it's nowhere near a bad game, but it is one I don't really have much interest in revisiting anytime soon. While there is a good amount of stuff in this title I enjoy, a lot of the game is super slow and repetitive. Chapter 5 is a very strong example of just pointless time wasting, no matter how, funny Fee versus Laura is. Plus, being the first game to a 4-entry long series means it's going to spend a large portion of its runtime explaining the new world and characters, which makes this game, like I mentioned earlier, really hard to revisit. And while I do enjoy things like the new combat, all the new characters, and Erebonia is an interesting new area, I still think this game is the weakest in both gameplay and story. Still fun, but nowhere near as bad as some make it out to be, but it is much harder to revisit. Speaking of hard to revisit though, from one beginning game to another, the next title on this list is the very first game in the series, Sky FC. Well, FC does run into some of the problems CS1 did, like sluggish pacing, having to spend most of its runtime introducing the world and its characters, and, to be honest, having some of the more dated combat mechanics. It is able to avoid some of the pitfalls one went through by being much smaller in scale. Liberel and its cast of characters are both much smaller, giving everything from the cast to the world itself a lot more time to breathe than CS1 has to deal with. So it's able to feel more fleshed out despite having the same kind of pacing issues. And I can also forgive FC a bit more because this was the series at its most primitive, meaning that all of the late game stuff that was added in isn't here. Plus, it was their first game doing this whole big world kind of over-connecting story, so it's much easier to forgive. Still a solid title overall, but like Cold Steel 1, I don't see much of an urge to go back to it. It got me into the franchise, but don't expect a playthrough again anytime soon. Yeah, so I was kind of torn on where I wanted to put Cold Steel 4, as while I was super invested in Cold Steel's final chapter, the amount of pure hype and intensity of the final setting, the score with Ozpin, plus the addition of a playable Duvalie already made it great, along with getting to see these characters I had grown to love working together to save all of Erebonia in the world, but there was some insanely frustrating stuff in 4. The nerfing of several game mechanics, the break mechanic now kind of felt useless in it in comparison to 3. The game just feels way too long as a result. A lot of padding issues, probably even more than FC and even Cold Steel 1 had. And several character arcs like Lecter and most of all Cedric were handled in a way I did not like in the slightest. I still think it's a very strong title, even with its really low lows. It has a lot of great fights and character moments, but I have no problem saying that I think it's one of my weaker Trails experiences, and probably the weakest finale to an arc so far. Although, to be fair, I think that really speaks to its series, where even its weakest finale is something that it's an easy 8 out of 10. Yep, Cold Steel 3 is up next. 3 and 4 are around the same ranking for me personally. I enjoyed 3 a bit more solely due to the fact that I think it was more fun to play through as a whole. 3 does suffer from the same kind of pacing issues and weird character choices that I believe 4 does. I think the arcs presented in this game are much stronger, mainly through Altina and Yuna, and while 4 does a good job finishing their journeys, I think 3 is a lot better at writing them. Seeing the beginning of Reen's journey as an instructor was also really cool, and there were a bunch of new additions to combat, like the Brave Orders, that made it a really awesome experience gameplay-wise. It still has some big flaws, like the game being way too easy to break, and as I stated before, pacing issues. I really gotta stop talking about those. It really feels like I'm just regurgitating old points. But honestly, I still had a blast with this game. Plus, that ending is absolutely crazy and easily the best cliffhanger the series has thrown at you since SC's ending. Made me really excited to see if Daybreak or anything in the Calvar saga is going to top something like that. Alright, we're now getting to the real good shit. From here on out, we got the masterpieces up next. And who better to kick us off than Trails into Reverie. I just finished this one recently and I absolutely loved it. And while it is less focused on pushing the narrative forward and more focused on its characters and setting up plot points for Kuro instead, well, I guess I should be calling it Daybreak now. And yes, I do get that is an issue for some people, like it is for Sky 3. I honestly love them. Look, I love Trails' ongoing narrative, but sometimes I think it's best to just slow down and let these characters in its world breathe a little bit. And Reverie definitely does that, while also boasting its own interesting story. It was nice to finally explore the Reverie corridor after only getting a small taste of it in 2. The 3 multiple routes you can jump through was a really cool concept that I'm kind of hoping appears some point later on, as I had a lot of fun jumping from Lloyd to Reen to then Rufus. Plus, you get a shitload of playable new characters, such as, like I said before, Rufus, Swin, Nadia, Lapis, and fucking McBurn. Yeah, he immediately makes this game 10 times better that you can play as this bastard. He's so damn strong. It just makes for such an entertaining experience, even if the game kinda gives you a little too many playable characters. Yeah, I decided to put Sky third over Reverie. I love both of these titles to death, don't get me wrong, but I do consider third to be superior. For one, it has Kevin. The end. Okay, I'll explain. I loved the arcs we went through in Reverie, but even with those top-class stories, Kevin's darker, much more personal story with Rias was just so captivating to follow along, as we finally learn more about the true face of the Heretic Hunker. Plus, there's also far less characters to focus on, leading to a much more easy-to-breathe gaming experience than the dozens upon dozens of characters that appear in Reverie. One weakness that I will point out that I think third has is the doors. They can be incredibly hit or miss in how enjoyable they are. Like, some are 20-30 minutes long with some interesting lore and character interactions, and then you get the hour-long yap session doors that are just a pain in the ass to get through. Chloe Lecter! But then there's Star Door 15, which is, Star Door 15, one of the darkest but insanely gripping pieces of story in Trails history. Yeah, they're a mixed bag, sure, but Trails third is not. It is absolutely fantastic. Oh yeah, we're getting to the controversial picks now, and I got one of the most controversial picks here, and I will die on this hill until the end of time. I genuinely think Cold Steel 2 is one of the best Trails games in the series and the absolute best game in the Cold Steel saga. It is such a massive improvement over everything Cold Steel 1 did. The pacing is far, far better. The story is infinitely more engaging, with Reen doing everything he can to bring an end to the Civil War by trying to find a third option that isn't picking one or the other. It's an interesting new additions to gameplay, like the addition of the burst mechanics, and introducing some of the game's and series itself's best characters, like Girl Failure Duvalie, and introducing the #1 enforcer himself, McBurn, baby! So many amazing moments in this game, and I haven't even gotten into all of that crazy twist at the end, like the fact that Rufus was a secret leader of the Iron Bloods, or that the Blood and Iron Chancellor himself is Reen's father. Then there's the playable Lloyd section. Oh, there's so many amazing moments in this game that I still don't get tired to this day talking about it. Hell, I don't even understand why people don't like it. After all that triggering sentences though, I think it's time we moved on to the next one. Well, we finally reached the top 3, and what better to cap off my top 3 than chatting about my baby, Trails from Zero. Now, I adore the Crossbell arc, as it is without a doubt my favorite arc in Trails, and Zero was the catalyst for that. A smaller scale world combined with a cast of incredibly interesting characters like Randy, Risha, Tio, and my boy Lloyd Bannings. Plus, Zero also not only introduced players to a fascinating story about a seedy underbelly and the dangers of corruption, but brought with it several new gameplay mechanics that really meshed well into the franchise, like being able to stun overworld enemies, things like team rush attacks, which would later get evolved into things like overdrives and bursts, team attacks, and best of all, dual Crafts. One of the best mechanics and a real badass ability that sadly disappeared after the cross battle arc. But it was still really awesome, and I will get on my hands and knees and pray one day that my Lord Kondo will give me this back. Come on, Calabar, don't let me down. Top 2, baby, and this, ooh boy, this was a hard decision to make. What was my second favorite title in the series? After all, after number 2 would be number 1. Which one was it? Was it going to be Trails to Azure, the conclusion to the Crossbell arc, one of my favorite arcs, if not my favorite? Or was it Sky SC, a game that I consider the pinnacle of sequels? And after a lot of thought, the number 2 spot had to go to Trails to Azure. This game excellently builds on everything Zero had set up. Several characters and their arcs feel so paid off here, 2 in particular being Rady and of course Best Girl Rishia. The level of stakes in this game are also some of my absolute favorites throughout the series. The Azure Tree is a fantastic dungeon that had easily one of my favorite reveals of the entire series, with the whole discovery that Kay, now also revealed to be a Septarian in this game, had turned back time and completely rewrote it after the original cast died. Like, I was fucking blown away when I learned that. It sounds like an asshole at first, but ends up working brilliantly when you look back on certain things that just feel a bit off in Zero. There was also the reveal of the Zemuria Trade Conference, or the prologue chapter, or the big reveal of who killed Lloyd's brother Guy. So much of this game is pure peak in every single sense of the word, and it is only beaten out by one other game in the series. Yeah, it was absolutely a no-brainer that this was going to be my number 1 pick, despite how many Trails games I've played in my long journey to catch up to Daybreak. I don't think I've ever reached any highs that Sky SC was able to. The world is heavily expanded upon in SC. It builds beautifully upon the cliffhanger that FC drops. Estelle, more particularly better than anyone, has some of the greatest character development I have seen in any RPG ever. The music is fantastic. The character moments are fantastic. The atmosphere is fantastic. It has some fantastic boss fights. Did I forget to mention that this game is just fantastic? Because it is. It has fantastic dungeons. Oh, you need me to mention it's fantastic even more? Well, it also has fantastic ending, too. So many things are fantastic in this game. It's immaculate. The game is purely immaculate, and to this day, my definitive Trails experience. Even if I may believe that Daybreak has what it takes to dethrone it. And with that, we have now reached the end of the list. And with it, I've come to a conclusion. No matter where I put each and every game in this series so far, and how I do definitely prefer some over the others, there's no doubt in my mind Trails is one of the most high quality series I've ever played. And with what I played of Daybreak so far, it's only going to just get better and better. Thank you all so much for watching my birthday video. This channel has honestly been an absolute blast to sink my time into and meet so many great people. And I'm forever grateful to everyone who stuck around as we slowly encroach on the 700 mark. See you next time for more RPG content. Also, small warning, if I don't upload after this, it means that the Trails fanbase assassinated me for this video. Bye!